All right, hello math fans. All right, so this is day 2 of this chapter, and what we're going to do is I'm going to do another quick example of graphing a quadratic for you. To make it a little more complicated, it's going to have fractions in it, but no big deal. And then we're going to get into actually using the square root button on our calculator, and actually doing a little bit more with our calculator, and again with square roots. All right, so the first problem I want to do with you guys, so it gets a little more complicated. So it's y equals negative 1/2 x squared plus 4x minus 7. All right, now the first thing you're going to tell me here, without even doing anything, this opens down. That's important. So guys, I mean, I have no idea where my vertex is, but I know the graph is going to look like this. I know it is. Okay, so if you plot points and you have it opening up, it's wrong. I mean, you should know whether it's right or wrong, at least based on if it opens up or down. So please be aware of that. All right, so this is definitely the first thing. The next thing I want to do is I want to find the vertex. And to find the x-coordinate of the vertex, remember it's opposite of b over 2 times a. So in this case here, our a is negative 1/2, our b is 4, and our c is negative 7. So opposite of b is going to be opposite of 4, or negative 4, over 2 times negative 1/2. Okay? So just be careful, because you have to get the vertex right. If you make one mistake with the vertex and you get it wrong, the whole problem is going to be wrong, because the other points are not going to plot correctly and you're not going to have a U shape. All right, so you got to be really careful. So 2 times negative 1/2 is negative 1. So my vertex is 4. And then remember, in your calculator, type it in. This is the way you're going to type in. You're going to type in negative 1 divided by 2. Just like that. You can use a division sign. 1 divided by 2. Put a parenthesis in here. 4 squared plus 4 times 4 minus 7. That's exactly how you're going to type in your calculator. And if you type that in your calculator, you're going to get that's equal to 1. All right? But just be careful typing it in. All right, so my vertex is going to be 4, 1. All right, axis of symmetry. Okay, axis of symmetry. Remember, it's x equals that 4 right there. That goes right there. X equals 4. And please do not forget x equals. Okay, if you just write 4 down for the axis of symmetry, I'm going to mark it wrong. So it's got to be x equals 4 as your axis of symmetry. Okay, so let's make a t-chart here. And this 4, 1 is going to go in the middle, and 3 and 2, and 5 and 6. Okay, so you already typed this in your calculator, negative 1/2, 4 squared plus 4 times 4 minus 7. You got 1. You just need to recall that and put a 5 in there instead. Okay, because I'm going to plug in 5, or 3, doesn't matter. I'm going to plug in 5. And just recall that number and just go and cursor over and change those numbers. That's the easiest way to do it. So if I put a 5 in there, and in my calculator I get 0.5. And I don't care if you have a decimal here. That doesn't bother me. So that means, remember, this is going to be 0.5, right? Those are the same. And then if I put a 6 in there, I get negative 1. Okay? So that's it. And you're saying, well, wait a second, how do you graph decimals? Well, it just means if it's 0.5, it's just between two numbers. That's all it is. So let's graph. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we plot our points. So 2, negative 1. 3, 0.5. And 0.5 is just between, here's 1 and here's 0, right? So 3 is just between, it's like right, that little tick mark right there. It's between those two. So we'll just kind of draw it in there. And then 4, 1 is right here. 5, 0.5. And 6, negative 1. All right, and so your graph is going to look like this. That's it. Okay, nice U shape, upside down U, of course, in this case. All right, so that's just a real basic, well, I shouldn't say it's a basic one. It's a more complicated one with some fractions, but just deal with the fractions. And, you know, if you're having trouble multiplying or dividing, use your calculator. It doesn't matter. You should know how to do it by using your brain, but make sure you get the problem correct. Okay, so that's just one more example. Let's actually do a little bit of work now on just square roots on your calculator, or square roots in your brain. All right. So if I have the square root of 1, well, that's 1. And square root of 4, that's 2. So if I ask you guys for perfect squares, okay, that's actually just saying 2 squared and putting that 4 in there. So 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. So these are all perfect squares. 25 is 5 squared. 6 times 6, or 6 squared, is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. 10 squared is 100. Right, you can keep going. If you know 11 squared, 121. 12 squared, 144. 13, 169. 14, 196. Okay, and you can kind of keep going. Now, obviously, you can use your calculator to figure these out, but what I'm asking you guys to do for this this part here is I'm just going to say, hey, what is the square root of 9? Okay, and you're going to tell me, oh, okay, that's 3. It's like really easy. All right. Now, if I give you a problem like, what's the square root of 10? Well, that's not a perfect square, so you're just going to type in your calculator. Okay, you're going to use your square root button and type in square root of 10, and you're going to get 3.162277766. All right. So you're going to give me a decimal point. It's really easy to use your calculator to figure these things out. The one thing I want to talk about now is I want to talk about rounding. All right, because I'm going to ask you guys to round to the nearest tenth, the nearest hundredth, the nearest thousandth, and if you round incorrectly, you're going to lose a point for the rounding. It's a really criminal way to lose points for a topic, but if you can't round correctly, I'm not going to give you full credit for the problem. So let's talk about rounding. Okay, the deal is you always look at the number 1 past the number you're rounding to. So in other words, this problem right here that we just did, if I ask you to round to the nearest hundredth, the hundredth is this place right here, 3.16. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at this number right here. Okay, that's important. So this is the deal. The first thing is if the number is greater than or equal to 5, so 5 and higher, I guess I should say this is the number past. Okay, so this is the past, this is like the 2 in here, the one I just drew the arrow on right there. Okay, if that number past is greater than or equal to 5, then you round up, or you add 1 to the number. Okay, and if the number past is less than 5, which is basically 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that means you keep the number the same. Okay? So you always look past that number, and that's what you make, how you make your decision. So let's do a couple of examples with rounding. If I have 4.596273. All right, so let's talk about if I round to the 10th. 10th is 1 decimal place. That means you're going to look at the 4.5. So let's actually, I'm going to write this number out again, 4.596273. okay, you're going to look at this guy right here, the 9, and you're going to say, oh, okay, it's 5 or bigger. That means I round this number up. So the answer is 4.6. Okay, if I round to the nearest hundredth, that's 2 decimal places. So let me write that number again, 2.59627.3. I'm going to round to this place right here. So I'm going to look at that number. I'm going to look at the 6. 6 is greater than or equal to 5. So again, I'm going to round up. Now, obviously, if I round up, I have a 9 here, so it's going to be 4.60 because you can't go higher than 9, right? You have to go around the next one. It's like saying 59. Well, what's after 59? 60. So that's why it's 4.60. All right. Thousandth is 3 places. So if I write that number, I'm going to write it a little bit lower here. 4.59627.3. So thousandth is 3 places. So it's that 6. And I look at the 2 and I say, oh, okay, it's smaller than 5. So I keep that number the same. So my answer is 4.596. That's the nearest thousandth. Okay. 10,000th is 4 places. So it's 4.59627.3. So 4 places means I'm looking at, or it's going to be the 2. The 7 is greater than or equal to 5, so I round up. So it's going to be 4.596.3. All right, so that's how rounding works. You always look at the place after the number you're rounding to, and if it's 5 or bigger, you round up. If it's below 5, you keep the number the same. Okay, so that's how you do rounding. So let's do a couple radical problems here. If I gave you the square root of 39, and I ask you to round to the nearest thousandth. So thousandth. Well, if you do it in your calculator, type in square root of 39, you're going to get 6.244997998. Okay, nearest thousandth is 3 places. So I'm going to look at this number right here and say, oh, it's a 9. So the answer is 6.245 because you round up. All right. So it's really easy to use your calculator, obviously. Let's do one more. The square root of 105. Ooh, I like that one. I get 10.24695.077. And if I ask you guys to round to the nearest hundredth, that's pretty common, actually. Nearest hundredth is the 4 right here. So I look at the 6. It's greater than or equal to 5. So my answer for this problem is 10.25. Okay? Pretty simple. So let's do a couple more square roots. What if I ask you guys to find the square root of negative 25? All right. Well, if you do that in your calculator, type in square root of negative 25, you get something that says you either get an error, you get a non-real answer, you get some sort of error. It doesn't give you that answer. And I want you guys to think about it. Square root of negative 25, isn't that, when I look for a perfect square, isn't it 2 numbers that multiply together to give you that number? They have to be the same number. Well, what 2 numbers multiply to give you negative 25 that are the same number? Okay, and it's not negative 20 or negative 5 times negative 5 because that's actually positive 25. So the only way to get negative 25 is by multiplying a negative and a positive, which means there's no number that's the same that will give you negative 25. So please don't give me an answer of error or non-real answer. What I want you guys to write is undefined. And it's not no solution. No solution means there's an x and I can't solve for x. There is no x here. So this is undefined. Make sure you write that correctly. If you have a square root of any negative number, I don't care what it is, square root of negative 105, it's undefined. All right? What about this? What about negative square root of 25? Well, that's okay. That's like saying -1 times the square root of 25, and we already know the square root of 25 is 5, so that's okay. That answer is -5 because the negative is on the outside of that square root. Okay, you also might see problems like this, plus or minus the square root of 49. Well, think of what the words mean. It means there are two parts to it. It's a plus part and a minus part. So the square root of 49 is 7, so it's plus or minus 7. And that's the answer to that problem. Okay? So don't get panicky with plus or minus. Plus or minus, just add it at the end of it. Plus or minus the square root of 100 is plus or minus 10. Okay? Pretty simple. Okay, so let's do something a little bit more complicated on our calculator. If I give you guys 4 plus or minus the square root of 13 over 3. Now you're like, oh geez, that looks really, really nasty. Well, you're going to use your calculator to give me a nice decimal answer for this. And this is how you do it. You're going to put it in your calculator twice because you have plus or minus. So the first thing I'm going to do, and you need to be really careful, it's 4 plus the square root of 13. Now this next part is super important. That's why I'm putting it in red. You have to hit equals. This is super important. Okay, you've got to hit equals. Because if you don't hit equals, you're not going to get the right answer. So it's 4 plus the square root of 13. Hit equals, and then because a fraction is just division, right? That's all a fraction is. Then you divide it by 3, and then hit equals again. So that's how you do this kind of problem. It's 4, so I'm going to do on my calculator. 4 plus the square root of 13. I'm going to hit equals. I get 7.6055512575. That's great. I don't really care about that. I'm going to divide it by 3 now. Hit equals, and I got and I'm going to round it to the nearest hundredth. So I got 2.54. Okay? That's half my answer. The other half of the answer is minus. So 4 minus the square root of 13. You make sure you hit equals. So 4 minus the square root of 13 gives me 0.3944, which is great. But then I'm going to divide that by 3. And I get 0.1. If I, again, round to the nearest hundredth, I get 0.13. So those are my two answers for that problem. Okay, they're really not difficult, but you have to know how to use your calculator and make sure you type it in correctly in your calculator. So let's try a couple more here just so you guys can practice too. -4 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 9. Okay, so I'm going to type in -4 plus the square root of 7, hit equals, and then divide that by 9. So -4 plus the square root of 7 equals, divided by 9 is -0.15, and -4 minus the square root of 7 equals, divided by 9, I get negative, so the minus gives me -0.74. Okay, there we go. Those are our two answers. Okay, let's try something just a little bit more complicated. 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 3 over 5. Well, that's no big deal. That 2 and 3, it's just multiplied. So you're literally in your calculator going to type in 4 plus 2 square root of 3 equals. So 4 plus 2 square root of 3. You get 7.46. And you're going to divide that by 5, and you get 1.49. So 4 minus 2 root 3 equals, divided by 5, you get, let's see, 4 minus 2 root 3 is 0.53, divided by 5, and I got 0.11. All right, so those are my two answers. Sometimes they're both positive, sometimes they're both negative, sometimes one's positive, one's negative, it all depends. All right, but that's how you use your calculator to figure out some of these little more complicated radicals. Okay, last thing I want to show you guys is I'm gonna ask you guys to evaluate this, the square root of b squared minus 4 AC. That's part of the quadratic formula, which we're going to learn later. Some of you may already know that. But for now, I'm just going to give you A is equal to 2, B is equal to 5, and C equals -2. All right? So in your calculator, what you're going to do is you are going to type this in first. Okay, that's what I would do if I were you. Please do not use the square root yet. Just say, oh, that's 5 squared, you're not going to hit equals yet, times 4 times 2 times -2. And then you're going to hit equals. So, again, type in your calculator. So 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times -2, and you get 41. And then you want to hit the square root of that. So the square root of 41 is 6.40. That's all you do. All right. So let me just give you another one. And I'm handing you A, B, and C. Now later on, you're going to actually come up with A, B, and C, which is easy, right? You just solve the equation and you just plug the values of A, B, and C in from the equation. All right. So A is equal to -4, B is equal to 8, and C is equal to -2. Okay, so no big deal. 8 squared minus 4, and I would put all this stuff in parentheses. In fact, even this 8, you could put in parentheses if you want, because I'll tell you, if that's -8, if you don't put it in parentheses, it's going to give you a -64, and it's going to be wrong. All right, so 8 squared minus 4 times A times C. So we get 64. Actually, I'll just type, it doesn't really matter. I can just type everything in my calculator. So I'm even going to get rid of this here. I'm going to say 8 squared minus 4 times -4 times -2. And you get 32. And then you take the square root of 32. So square root of 32 gives us 5.66. Okay, that's that one. Let's do, well, we'll do one more on top here with some more negatives. So if A is equal to negative 3, B is equal to -9, and C is equal to 4. All right, so B squared, -9 squared, minus 4 times -3 times 4. Okay, so you're going to do -9 squared, which, again, be careful, minus 4 times -3 times 4. So you get 129. Take the square root of that, and you get 11.36. Okay? So that kind of gets you ready a little bit for the quadratic formula, which is going to be coming up in a couple days. But that's pretty much what I want to teach you guys today, just a little bit about square roots using your calculator. If you get a negative number underneath the radical, it's undefined, and teaching you about plus or minus, even dividing, but just be careful with your calculator and rounding. Okay? All right, math fans, that's it. Have a nice day. Goodbye.